It started on a Tuesday. I was walking through a supermarket, bright lights overhead, music playing faintly from the speakers. People passed by me with carts full of cereal boxes and coffee jars, like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong, deeply wrong. First, it was my chest, a tightness like someone was slowly tightening a belt around my ribs. Then my heart, hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I remember staring at a can of soup and thinking, something's happening. Am I dying? The floor felt too far away. My vision narrowed, like I was underwater or inside a tunnel. My legs turned to jelly. My hands trembled as I reached for the shelf, not to pick anything up, but just to keep from falling over. Then came the dizziness. It felt like the world was tilting. I tried to breathe, but my chest wouldn't move, like my lungs had forgotten how. Everything felt loud, the carts squeaking, kids laughing, someone coughing. I tried to walk to the bathroom, but my legs wouldn't listen. I stood in the middle of aisle 7, frozen, just frozen. I looked around. Dozens of people were near me, but no one saw me, no one noticed. I wanted to scream, "Help me!" But the words got stuck somewhere between my mind and my mouth. Instead, I leaned against the metal shelf and slid down to the floor. Knees pulled to my chest, hoping I'd disappear. My palms were soaked in sweat. My head was spinning. My thoughts were racing like a movie reel stuck in fast forward. Am I having a heart attack? Should I call someone? Do I even have time? I don't know how long I sat there. It could have been 5 minutes or 50. Eventually, the worst of it passed. But I didn't feel better. I felt empty. When I finally made it outside, I sat on the curb next to the parking lot and stared at nothing. The world kept moving. People pushing carts, loading groceries, laughing, arguing on their phones. But I was still, silent, afraid. And in that moment, one terrifying truth settled in my chest like concrete. This wasn't physical. This wasn't a heart attack. This was a panic attack. Before the fear, before the breakdowns, I was normal. At least that's what everyone thought. I had a good job. I was the one who showed up early, stayed late, volunteered for extra tasks. People said I was dependable, driven, even inspiring. I laughed at the right times, made conversation during lunch, gave solid presentations in meetings. Outside, I looked like someone who had it together, and maybe I did, on paper. But I also remember waking up with a sense of heaviness I couldn't explain. I thought I was just tired, burned out maybe. Everyone feels like that sometimes, right? I lived in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a quiet building. My desk was always neat. My fridge, half full. I went to the gym twice a week. I called my mom on Sundays. I remembered birthdays. It wasn't an extraordinary life, but it was structured, predictable, safe. And yet, there were cracks. Sometimes, I'd lie in bed at night and feel my mind spiral, not about big things, little things, an awkward comment I made at work, a deadline I might miss, a message left on read. I would replay them over and over like a scratched CD, unable to stop. I thought I was just a perfectionist, a worrier. Everyone has quirks, I told myself. On the outside, I was calm. On the inside, I was rehearsing disasters, but I didn't talk about it. Who wants to admit they feel like they're drowning when they're not even in water? I brushed off the warning signs. The racing thoughts, the tightness in my chest that would come and go, the sudden jolts of adrenaline that would hit out of nowhere while doing something as harmless as checking emails. At work, I was the funny one, the capable one, the one who said, "No worries, I've got it," and that became my mask. Even around friends, I played the role. I went to dinner, I asked about their lives, I nodded and smiled and even gave advice, all while quietly wondering what was wrong with me. Looking back now, I can see the clues. I wasn't just tired, I was running on fumes. I wasn't just overthinking, I was rehearsing imaginary tragedies in my mind every hour of every day, but I didn't know what anxiety really looked like. Not the high-functioning kind. Not the kind that hides behind a polished exterior. I thought anxiety meant being nervous all the time, crying in public, or avoiding everything. I didn't know it could mean working harder, smiling more, and never letting anyone see the cracks. If someone had asked me back then, "Are you okay?" I would have said, "Yeah, just busy," with a smile. That was before the storm, before I realized that anxiety doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, and we don't hear it until it's too loud to ignore. It didn't happen all at once. Anxiety didn't barge in and take over. It crept, slowly, quietly, like a fog that thickens so gradually you don't notice until you can't see anymore. At first, it was the sleep. I'd lie in bed, my body exhausted, but my mind wide. Awake, replaying conversations from the day. Imagining worst-case scenarios for tomorrow. What if I said the wrong thing? What if they misunderstood that email? What if I get fired? I told myself it was just a busy week, that I'd sleep better tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. Then came the tension. I clenched my jaw so hard during the day that my face would ache by evening. My shoulders were always tight. I had a headache almost every afternoon. My doctor said it was probably just stress. I started avoiding calls. Friends would message, "Want to hang out this weekend?" And I'd freeze. I'd stare at the screen, heart racing, crafting the perfect excuse. Not because I didn't like them, but because the thought of leaving the house, making small talk, pretending to be okay, was exhausting. Still, I showed up sometimes. I smiled, I laughed, and then I'd go home and collapse, drained from the performance. It became harder to concentrate. At work, I'd stare at my computer screen for hours, rewriting the same sentence, terrified of making a mistake, terrified of being found out, whatever that meant. I became obsessed with being perfect, triple-checking emails, rehearsing voicemails before leaving them, editing social media posts 5 times before hitting send. Underneath all of it was this hum of dread, like something bad was coming, like I was always on the verge of being in trouble, and yet I told no one. I convinced myself this was just adult life. Everyone's tired, everyone's stressed, right? Besides, what would I even say? Hey, I feel like I'm unraveling, but I'm still hitting deadlines and making jokes at lunch, so maybe I'm fine. So I kept going, smiling in meetings, volunteering for projects, telling my parents I was doing great, but inside I was eroding. I began Googling symptoms late at night. Tight chest anxiety or heart issue? Why do I feel like I'm going to die, but nothing is wrong? How to stop panic before it starts. My search history became a mirror to the chaos I hid from everyone else. Some nights I would sit on the floor of my apartment in total silence and feel like I was about to implode. No tears, no screaming, just stillness and a mind spinning. 1,000 miles an hour. I developed rituals, checking the stove twice before leaving, making sure I locked the door, rereading every message I sent in case I sounded weird or too much. The scariest part wasn't what others saw, it was what they didn't. On the outside, I was fine, functioning, productive, but inside, I was breaking in slow motion. People would say, "You're so calm under pressure." And I'd smile, thinking, if only you knew. Eventually, even the mask started to slip. I began snapping at small things, crying over nothing, waking up with my heart racing for no reason. That's when I realized I wasn't just stressed. Something was happening, and I couldn't pretend it wasn't real anymore. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a team meeting that morning and a dentist appointment scheduled for the afternoon. Ordinary things, nothing out of place. I was walking to my car after lunch, balancing a coffee and fumbling for my keys. And then it hit me. My chest tightened so suddenly I dropped my cup. My heart was pounding, loud, fast, violent. It felt like someone had slammed an invisible weight on my chest. I couldn't breathe, not just a gasp or a short inhale. I couldn't breathe. The world around me blurred. People walked past, cars drove by. Everything was moving in slow motion, and yet I felt like I was falling fast. I stumbled toward the edge of the parking lot and crouched near the curb, trying not to collapse completely. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My vision tunneled. My hearing muffled like I was underwater. I thought, this is it. I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to die right here, and no one even sees me. A stranger passed me, glanced over, and kept walking. No one stopped, no one noticed. That was maybe the scariest part. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably 5 minutes, I managed to call a rideshare and cancel the rest of my day. I told work I had a migraine. I told the dentist I'd reschedule. I went home, locked the door, and curled up on my bed, fully clothed, still shaking. I thought sleep would fix it. It didn't. For the next few days, I avoided everything. Calls, emails, even opening the curtains. Every small sound made me flinch. I was terrified it would happen again, and this time I wouldn't make it home. When I finally got the courage to tell a coworker what happened, she said, "Sounds like stress. Maybe take a break." Take a break. I didn't need a vacation. I needed answers. I needed someone to see me, but I didn't know what I was dealing with. I had no name for it. So I went to urgent care. I told them what happened. The doctor listened, checked my vitals, and said the words that changed everything. That sounds like a panic attack. I blinked. Panic attack? I thought those were just dramatic reactions in movies. He explained that it was real, that my body was reacting to intense stress, even if I looked fine on the outside. He gave me a pamphlet, suggested a therapist, and just like that, I had a label. But it didn't feel comforting. It felt terrifying, because now I had to admit something was actually wrong, and worse, there was no quick fix. Later that week, while trying to explain it to a friend, they shrugged and said, "We all get anxious. Just breathe." Just breathe, as if I hadn't tried, as if I hadn't begged my lungs to fill, while my chest felt like it was caving in. That's when it hit me. Most people don't understand what panic really feels like. They think it's nerves, butterflies, a bad day. But this was something else. This was my body turning against me. That's when I stopped feeling safe. Even inside my own body, I cancelled every plan. After that first fall, I stopped making plans altogether. Coffee catch-ups, family dinners, even quick errands, everything became a risk. What if I had another panic attack while standing in line at the store? What if it happened while I was on a train with no way out? So I stayed home. At first, people understood. They said, "Rest up, take it easy." But when I kept saying no, they stopped asking. Google became my therapist. In the quiet of my room, I searched obsessively. Panic attack symptoms. Is this anxiety, or am I dying? Can anxiety cause chest pain every day? I read forums, medical articles, Reddit threads, hoping someone had a cure, a trick, anything. The more I read, the more I feared. Every sensation became a red flag. A sore muscle, blood clot, skipped heartbeat, sudden cardiac death, dizziness, brain tumor. It wasn't just anxiety, it was anxiety about anxiety. Even breathing felt like a risk. I started watching my body like a hawk, hyper-aware of every breath, every heartbeat. I'd check my pulse constantly, wrist, neck, again, sometimes in meetings, sometimes while pretending to listen on calls. Deep down, I knew it wasn't rational, but fear doesn't listen to reason. Shame became my shadow. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the shame that followed it. How do you explain to someone that you're afraid of your own heartbeat, that walking to the mailbox makes you dizzy, that sitting still feels like drowning? So I didn't. I let the shame fester. Every time someone said, "You don't look anxious," I'd smile and nod while sinking further inside myself. I disappeared without leaving. I became a ghost in my own life, still showing up for work, still sending the "I'm good" texts, still liking photos on Instagram, but I wasn't there, not really. I stopped dreaming about the future, stopped planning trips, stopped imagining anything beyond survival. Wake up, try to breathe. Get through the day, repeat, this was life now, an invisible illness in a loud world. In Western culture, especially in Europe and the US, there's this expectation. Be productive, be upbeat, be fine, but I wasn't fine. I was falling, apart in silence. No one brought me flowers or soup, no one saw me as sick. Because I had no cast, no scars, no diagnosis they could see, I looked okay. So I must be okay. Right? Wrong. Emotional close. The truth is, I wasn't living. I was surviving, barely. I'd built a life around fear, carefully tiptoeing through each day, trying not to trigger it, avoiding places, avoiding people, avoiding myself. But deep inside, a quiet voice kept whispering, "This can't be all there is." Something had to give. I remember sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 a.m. It had been another night of pacing the hallway, pressing 2 fingers to my neck, feeling my heartbeat pound like a war drum. I hadn't eaten properly in days. My face looked pale, hollow. I didn't recognize the person in the mirror anymore. Something had to give. That night, I opened my phone, not to Google another symptom, but to find a therapist. Reaching out felt like defeat. It wasn't easy. There's this idea many of us carry, that asking for help means you're weak, that you've failed at holding it together. But honestly, I was tired of holding it together. I found a clinic nearby that offered sliding scale sessions. I didn't know if therapy would work, but I had nothing left to lose. I called the next morning. My voice cracked when I said, "I think I need help." The receptionist didn't ask for an explanation. She just said, "We'll take care of you." I cried after that call, not because I was sad, because someone finally heard me. First session. The first therapy session was awkward. I sat across from a woman who looked like she could have been my old school teacher. She asked me, "So, what brings you in today?" I opened my mouth, and everything spilled out. The parking lot, the chest pain, the shame, the Googling, the nights I didn't sleep. She nodded gently and said, "It sounds like you've been living in fear for a long time." And that was the first time someone had said it out loud. A name for the monster. She explained how anxiety works, how it's not just in your mind, but also in your nervous system. She said I wasn't broken, that I wasn't crazy, that panic attacks are real and terrifying, and yes, treatable. She gave it a name, generalized anxiety disorder with panic symptoms. It didn't make it disappear, but it made it make sense. I wasn't weak, I wasn't lazy, I was sick, and I could get better. Building a plan. Together, we created a plan. We started small sleep hygiene, breathing exercises, limiting caffeine, journaling at night. Later, we added cognitive behavioral therapy, and eventually, when I felt ready, I explored medication with a doctor. It wasn't magic, but slowly, the fog began to lift. I had words now. I had tools. I had hope. Why this? Part matters. This section of the journey doesn't get glamorized enough. It doesn't have the drama of a breakdown or the triumph of full recovery. But this messy middle where you ask for help is everything. Because it means you've decided to stop suffering in silence. It means you're choosing yourself. And that is brave. I thought I was cured. After a few weeks of therapy and new routines, I started feeling like myself again. The mornings didn't feel so heavy. The pounding in my chest was less frequent. I even laughed, genuinely laughed, on a video call with a friend. I thought, maybe it's over, maybe I beat it. But anxiety doesn't leave that easily. Relapse hit me hard. It was a random Tuesday. Nothing special, nothing stressful. But as I stood at the kitchen sink, I felt it creep back in. Tight chest, shallow breaths, a wave of fear. My first thought wasn't, "What's wrong with me?" It was, "Not again." That night, I spiraled. All the old thoughts came flooding back at what if I'm getting worse? What if this never ends? What if it's something else this time? The next day I cancelled everything and lay in bed, defeated. Therapy taught me this would happen. I told my therapist I felt like a failure. She looked at me and said gently, "This isn't failure. This is part of recovery." She reminded me that healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. Sometimes you loop back, but each time you come back stronger and faster. That changed everything. Tools I started to trust. I began leaning on my toolkit. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Challenging distorted thoughts. Reframing the panic saying, "I've survived this before, I'll survive it again." Breathing techniques, the 4-7-8 method, box breathing. They slowed down my racing mind, even if just for a minute. Journaling, getting the chaos out of my head and onto paper. No judgment, just honesty. Mindfulness and meditation. Learning to be present with discomfort, not run from it. Hard but worth it. Movement, gentle walks, stretching, not to burn calories, but to feel alive in my body again. Medication. For some, it's controversial. For me, it was a lifeline. It didn't erase the anxiety, but it quieted the roar enough for me to breathe again. Wins began to outweigh the setbacks. The next time a panic wave hit, I didn't run. I let it pass through me like a storm, and sure enough, it passed. I started celebrating small wins, making it through a grocery store trip, answering a phone call, getting out of bed on a hard day. Stopped comparing myself to who I was before anxiety. Instead, I honored who I was becoming through it. What no one tells you. No one tells you that recovery doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like less dread when you wake up, remembering to eat breakfast, laughing even if your heart's still racing. Recovery is quiet, it's slow, but it's real, and the more you trust yourself, the louder hope gets. I still get anxious. Yes, anxiety still visits, sometimes unexpected, sometimes loud, but it no longer owns me. I can sit with it, breathe through it, and remind myself, this feeling isn't forever. That's what healing looks like, not the absence of fear, but the presence of courage. If I could talk to my younger self, I'd sit across from them, eyes tired, chest tight, and I'd say, "You're not weak, you're not broken, you're just overwhelmed, and that's okay." I'd tell them that the world feels too loud sometimes, that even the strongest people crumble, that pretending you're fine will only make it worse, and that there's no shame in struggling. I thought anxiety would ruin me. For a long time I believed my life was over. I thought I'd never laugh freely again, never travel, never fall in love, never enjoy silence without dreading it. But here I am, not cured, not fearless, but free in a new kind of way. Anxiety didn't ruin me, it revealed me, living with, not fighting against. I used to think recovery meant getting rid of anxiety. Now I see it differently. Anxiety is like an old injury. Some days it flares up. Other days I don't even notice it. I've learned to live with it, move with it, rather than constantly battle it. Like dancing with a partner you didn't choose, but learned to trust. I started listening to my body, to my needs, to the quiet voice inside that used to whisper but now speaks with confidence. Anxiety forced me to slow down, to reevaluate what I value, to let go of perfectionism, people-pleasing, and the need to always be on. I realized that rest isn't laziness. Boundaries aren't selfish. Saying no is a full sentence, and I found my people. When I finally opened up, I discovered I wasn't alone. So many others had been hiding the same thing behind fake smiles and "I'm fines" I found. Community and support groups, comments under mental health videos, whispered conversations with friends who finally said, "Me too." There's something sacred about shared struggle. It builds bridges where walls once stood. Anxiety gave me empathy. Now, when I see someone anxious in a store, stuttering in a meeting, avoiding eye contact, I don't judge. I see them because I am them, and that empathy, it's one of the most beautiful gifts anxiety gave me. This is what I've learned. I've learned that healing isn't about going back. It's about going forward with more grace, more compassion, and more honesty. I've learned to take life one breath at a time, to celebrate the quiet victories, to let myself cry, to let myself rest, and most of all, I've learned to love myself, not despite the anxiety, but alongside it, because I'm still here, still breathing, still trying, and that is more than enough. If you're watching this, right now, maybe you're sitting in your room with your heart pounding for no reason. Maybe you're scared to go to work. Maybe you're exhausted from pretending you're okay. Or maybe you've just had enough. I want you to know something. You are not alone. I know what it feels like to smile on the outside while your mind is screaming for help, to go to parties, meetings, or family dinners and feel like you're floating, detached, dizzy, like you're not even real, to check your pulse 100 times a day, to wonder if this is really anxiety or something worse. I know that kind of fear, and I know the shame that comes with it. But hear me. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. You're human. You're overwhelmed. And you deserve support. You don't have to hit rock bottom to ask for help. You can talk to someone, a friend, a therapist, a doctor. You can try again and again and again. There is no shame in needing help. There is only courage in reaching for it. This isn't the end of your story. It might feel like it now, like the fear will never leave, like the panic will swallow you whole, like you'll never be you again. But you will, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but you will, and when you do, it'll be a quieter kind of strength. The kind you carry in your breath, your boundaries, your voice. You'll start living again, you'll laugh again, you'll trust yourself again, and when that happens, you'll be someone else's proof that healing is possible. Until then, keep going. One breath, one choice, one day at a time. If this story spoke to you, please consider subscribing or leaving a comment. Share your experience. Let others know they're not alone either. Together, we can turn silence into support and fear into strength.